Harlem, 1934. The room went completely silent when Bumpy Johnson walked through that door. Not the good kind of quiet. The kind where 15 white men wearing hoods stopped talking, stopped breathing, and reached for the guns hidden under their robes. They were having a Klan meeting in the basement of an old, empty warehouse near the Harlem River. This was on the edge of his territory, in his neighborhood. The Grand Dragon stood up slowly. "Boy, you just made the biggest mistake of your—" Bumpy didn't let him finish talking. What happened in the next 8 minutes would become a legend that people still talk about today. 15 men walked into that meeting. Only 3 walked out. And those 3 men spent the rest of their lives wishing they hadn't survived. This is the story of the night Bumpy Johnson taught the KKK that Harlem wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a kingdom. And kings don't ask for permission. To understand what happened that night, you need to understand what Harlem was facing in early 1934. The Great Depression had hit Black America harder than anyone else. More than half the people in Harlem didn't have jobs. Families were getting kicked out of their homes. Kids were going hungry. And the Ku Klux Klan saw this as their chance to cause trouble. See, the Klan wasn't just a problem in the South. By the 1930s, they had groups all over the North, too. New York, Chicago, Detroit, places where black people had moved looking for freedom. But they found out that the same hatred had followed them north. In Harlem, the Klan's plan was different than it was down south. They couldn't openly march through black neighborhoods in white robes without getting attacked. So they worked in the shadows, hiding their identities. They slipped scary, anonymous threats under people's doors. They burned crosses on rooftops. In the middle of the night when nobody could see them. Black-owned businesses would find their windows smashed and their products destroyed. There were no witnesses and no arrests. And the New York City police did nothing to help. Some of the police officers were probably Klan members themselves. By February 1934, Harlem's community leaders were terrified. Preachers talked about having faith but slept with guns next to their beds. Business owners hired armed guards to protect their stores. And nobody seemed able to stop them, nobody except one man. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson was 28 years old in 1934. He had been living in Harlem for almost 10 years, working his way up from being a street enforcer to becoming one of the most respected people running the numbers racket, which was an illegal lottery. He didn't just take money from the community, he protected it. When white landlords tried to kick out black families who couldn't pay rent, Bumpy paid their rent for them. When dishonest cops threatened black businesses and demanded money, Bumpy made sure those cops got transferred to different areas. When outside gangs tried to move into Harlem and cause trouble, Bumpy sent them back in ambulances. To the people of Harlem, Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a criminal. A man who had grown up fighting, who had spent time in prison. And when the Klan started terrorizing Harlem, Bumpy Johnson took it very personally. February 7, 1934, one day before the big meeting. Bumpy was sitting in the back room of Small's Paradise, a jazz club on 135th Street, when one of his most valuable helpers walked in. This made him perfect for the kind of spy work Bumpy needed done in a city divided by skin color. Marcus looked nervous and tense. "Need to know about." Bumpy pointed for him to sit down. "Talk. I've been following that Klansman like you asked me to. The one who's been handing out threats in the neighborhood. His name is William Hawkins. I've been following him for 3 days." Bumpy leaned forward, and tonight he met with other men. "I stayed back and—" "The one on the edge by 145th Street in the industrial area. They're having some kind of meeting right now." Marcus pulled out a small notebook. "Connecticut, New Jersey, Bronx. These aren't local guys. This is organized." Bumpy studied the notebook carefully. 15 men. A warehouse by the river. Far enough from busy streets that nobody would hear anything. Close enough to escape routes if they needed to run away fast. Did you see what they brought inside? A wooden cross, 6 feet tall, cans of gasoline, and everyone had weapons. Big. Bumpy was quiet for a long moment, his mind thinking through what this all meant. They were getting ready to take action. They were probably planning to attack multiple places at once. Churches, businesses, maybe even people's homes. He looked up at Marcus. "You did really good work. Really good." He pulled out his wallet, counted out $200, which was a lot of money back then, and handed it to Marcus. "But now you forget everything you saw. You weren't there. You didn't follow anybody. Understand?" "Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson." Marcus took the money, understanding exactly what Bumpy was about to do, and disappeared into the night. After Marcus left, Bumpy sat alone in that back room for 2 hours, thinking and planning. His closest friends, men he had fought beside for years, offered to come with him. They offered to bring guns, bring more men, bring whatever he needed. Bumpy said no to all of them. "This isn't about having more guns," he said quietly. "This is about sending a message. And that message needs to come from one man, me." His lieutenant, a man named Illinois Gordon, tried to argue with him. "Bumpy, you're talking about walking into a room with 15 Klansmen. They're going to have weapons. They're planning something big. You walk in there alone, and they'll kill you before you can even blink." Bumpy smiled, that cold smile that made people uncomfortable. "They're not expecting me at all. And that's exactly why I'm going to walk out, and they're not." February 8, 1934, 11:30 p.m. Bumpy Johnson walked through the Harlem streets alone. He wore a gray wool suit, a black fedora hat, and a long coat that hid what he was carrying underneath. The temperature had dropped to 28 degrees Fahrenheit. It was freezing cold. His breath came out in white clouds. The streets were mostly empty. There were just a few late-night people hurrying home with their heads down against the cold wind. As he walked east toward the river, the neighborhood changed around him. The lively storefronts and brownstone houses of central Harlem gave way to darker, emptier streets, closed factories, abandoned warehouses, the industrial wasteland where Harlem met the Harlem River. This was the forgotten edge of the neighborhood, where the city put things it wanted to forget about, where men like the Klan could meet without anyone noticing them. He reached the warehouse on the edge of Harlem at 11:35 p.m. It was a 3-story brick building that sat in the industrial zone near the Harlem River. This forgotten stretch of land was where Harlem's vibrant streets gave way to abandoned factories and empty lots. The warehouse had once held a textile factory before the Great Depression shut it down. Now it was just another empty shell in this no-man's land between Harlem and the river. It was far enough from busy streets that screams wouldn't carry to anyone who could help. It was close enough to the 145th Street Bridge that white men could escape to the Bronx if things went wrong. It was the perfect location for cowards who wanted to plan terror without being seen. Bumpy walked around the building once, carefully noticing all the details. 2 cars were parked in the alley behind it. Expensive cars, Buicks and Cadillacs, not the kind of cars you would normally see in Harlem. These were white men's cars with Connecticut and New Jersey license plates, just like Marcus had said. There was one entrance in the front that was boarded up. There was one loading dock entrance in the back with the doors slightly open. That's where they had gone inside. Bumpy checked his watch. 11:40 p.m. He stood in the shadows for 5 minutes just listening. From inside the building, he could hear voices. They were muffled but clear enough to make out. Men talking, laughing, the sound of furniture being moved around. They were setting things up. At 11:45 p.m., Bumpy pulled his coat tighter around him, adjusted his fedora hat, and walked toward that loading dock door. He didn't knock. He simply pulled the door open and walked inside. The basement was lit by kerosene lamps hanging from the ceiling. 15 men wearing white robes and hoods stood around a wooden table covered with maps of Harlem. In the corner sat a wooden cross, 6 feet tall, waiting to be carried out and burned somewhere in the neighborhood. They were in the middle of planning their attacks. The Grand Dragon, a man named Robert Garrison from Connecticut, was pointing at the map and assigning targets to different people. Thompson, you take the church. Wait until their Wednesday service lets out. Then, he stopped talking in the middle of his sentence because Bumpy Johnson was standing in the doorway. The room went completely silent. 15 white hoods turned toward that door. 15 men who had been laughing and planning and feeling powerful and invincible suddenly froze in place. They had chosen an abandoned building in the industrial zone where nobody went at night. They had kept their meeting secret from everyone except trusted clan members. And yet somehow, impossibly, a black man in a gray suit was standing in their doorway, looking at them like he owned the place. Robert Garrison was the first one to recover from the shock. He was a businessman from Stamford, Connecticut, who ran clan operations in New York and New Jersey. He had organized dozens of these meetings. Before, he had burned dozens of crosses. He had terrorized black communities from Baltimore to Boston. He had never been challenged like this before. Garrison pulled back his hood, showing a thin face with wire-rimmed glasses and a mean, disrespectful smile. Boy, you just made the biggest mistake of your Bumpy, held up one hand to stop him. The gesture was so calm and so powerful that Garrison actually stopped talking mid-sentence. Before you finish that sentence, Bumpy said, his voice quiet and steady, I want you to understand something. You picked the wrong neighborhood. Then the others reached for the pistol on his hip. Bumpy didn't move, didn't flinch. He just looked at the young man and said calmly, You pull that gun, you better use it. Because if you don't kill me with the first shot, you won't get a second chance. The young man's hand froze on his gun. He didn't draw it. Garrison tried to take control of the situation again. There's 15 of us. One of you. Even if you have a gun hidden under that coat, you'd be dead before you could even pull it out. So I suggest you turn around, walk out that door, and forget you ever saw us here. Bumpy tilted his head slightly to one side. See, that's where you made your mistake. You think I came here to negotiate and talk. He took 3 steps into the room, slow, deliberate. His hands were still visible and still empty. You've been terrorizing my neighborhood for months, burning crosses, breaking windows, threatening families. You thought we were too scared to fight back. You thought because you're white, because you have hoods and guns, because you have the police protecting you, that you could do whatever you wanted. Another step forward, you were wrong. Garrison's confidence was starting to crack and fade. Listen, boy. Stop calling me boy. Bumpy's voice didn't get louder. It didn't need to. My name is Bumpy Johnson. And after tonight, every clan member from here to Mississippi is going to know that name. Because you 15 are going to be a lesson for everyone else. One of the clansmen, a heavy, overweight man with a southern accent, stepped forward aggressively. We don't need to listen to this. Let's just kill this uppity. He never finished the sentence. What happened next was brutal, efficient, and absolutely terrifying. Bumpy moved. Not with the wild, desperate violence of a man fighting for his life. He moved with the calculated precision of someone who had been planning this exact moment for hours, someone who knew exactly what he was going to do before he even walked through that door. The heavy clansman reached for his gun, but Bumpy had already closed the distance between them. One punch to the throat, crushing his windpipe. The man went down to the floor, gasping and choking, drowning on air. The young clansman who had reached for his gun earlier finally drew it out, but his hands were shaking badly. The shot went wild, missing Bumpy completely and punching a hole in the brick wall behind him. Bumpy grabbed a kerosene lamp from the table and threw it hard. The glass shattered against the young man's chest. The kerosene caught fire immediately. From the flame, The man screamed in pain, dropping his gun and trying desperately to pat out the fire that was spreading across his white robe. Now the entire room erupted into complete chaos. 15 men were trying to draw their guns, trying to rush at Bumpy all at once, trying to escape through the only door that Bumpy was now blocking. But here's what they didn't know. What nobody except Bumpy's closest friends knew. Bumpy Johnson had grown up fighting his whole life. Not just street fights, real fights. Prison fights where you fought to survive, where coming in second place meant you were dead. He had learned from the best fighters, from old-timers in Sing Sing prison, who taught him that fighting wasn't about being the strongest. It was about leverage, timing, and brutality applied to vulnerable spots on the body. Throat, eyes, knees, groin. Bumpy didn't waste energy on body shots or fancy moves. He went straight for the places that destroyed a man's ability to fight back. Robert Garrison tried to rally his men and organize them. Spread out. Surround him. He's just one man. Bumpy grabbed the wooden cross from the corner, 6 feet of solid oak wood. He swung it like a baseball bat with all his strength. The cross connected with Garrison's head. The sound was like a watermelon splitting open. Garrison went down to the floor hard and didn't get back up. 3 Klansmen rushed at Bumpy all at once, trying to overwhelm him. He used the cross like a spear, driving the pointed end into the first man's stomach. He used the leverage to swing the cross around in a circle, catching the second man across the face. The third man got close enough to grab onto Bumpy's coat. Bumpy dropped the cross, pulled a straight razor from his pocket, and slashed the man's face from his eye to his jaw. The man screamed in agony and stumbled backward, blood pouring through his fingers as he tried to hold his face together. The kerosene fire from the lamp was spreading now. The abandoned building's dry wood was catching fire fast. Smoke was filling up the basement. The remaining Klansmen were coughing, stumbling around, trying to see through the thick smoke and chaos. Bumpy moved through that smoke like he could see right through it. Like he had memorized the entire room's layout before the fire even started. Because he had. One by one, the Klansmen went down. Some fell from Bumpy's fists and weapons. Some were hit by friendly fire as panicked men shot at shadows in the smoke. Some collapsed from the smoke and fire itself. The whole fight took 8 minutes. Trying to escape. When the smoke cleared enough to see what had happened, 3 men were still alive. Not unharmed, all 3 had serious injuries like broken bones, burns, and cuts, but they were breathing and conscious. 12 bodies lay on that basement floor. Some were dead from violence. Some died from breathing in too much smoke. Some died from the fire that was now consuming the entire building. Bumpy stood near the door, breathing hard, his suit torn and ripped, blood on his hands and face. Not all of the blood was his own. He looked at the 3 survivors. 2 were crawling on their hands and knees toward the exit. 1 was just lying there, whimpering and crying, unable to move at all. Bumpy walked over to them slowly. He knelt down next to the closest one, a man whose hood had fallen off during the fight, showing a face that couldn't have been more than 25 years old. "What's your name?" Bumpy asked quietly. The man was crying. Patrick Murphy. You from around here, Patrick?" "Bronx. You have family?" Patrick nodded his head, still crying. Bumpy grabbed him by the collar of his robe and pulled him close so their faces were inches apart. "Then you go home to them tonight. And you tell every Klan member you know what happened here. You tell them Bumpy Johnson walked into a meeting of 15 men and walked out alone. You tell them what happens when you terrorize Harlem." He released Patrick, who scrambled toward the exit as fast as he could move. Bumpy turned to the other 2 survivors lying on the floor. "Same goes for you 2. Get out. Spread the word. The Klan is not welcome in Harlem. Not ever." The 3 men crawled, stumbled, and dragged themselves up the stairs and out of that burning building as fast as their broken bodies could move. Bumpy followed them slowly, taking his time. He looked back one last time at the 12 bodies lying in that basement, at the burning cross that had been meant to terrorize Harlem's families, at the maps and plans that would never be carried out now. He walked out into the cold February night, leaving the building to burn behind him. The flames reflected off the dark waters of the Harlem River as Bumpy disappeared into the industrial shadows, heading back toward the heart of his kingdom. By morning, the warehouse was nothing but a smoking ruin. Firefighters came and found 12 bodies in the basement. The New York City police sent detectives to investigate. They questioned the 3 survivors in the hospital. Patrick Murphy and the other 2 gave vague, confusing stories that didn't match each other. "We don't know who attacked us. It was too dark. Everything happened so fast." But the detectives found evidence and remnants of what the meeting had been about. White robes, Ku Klux Klan pamphlets and literature, maps of Harlem with black churches and businesses marked as targets, the wooden cross half burned. The lead detective, a man named Sullivan, sat in the police captain's office with his report. 12 dead white men, all Klan members killed during an illegal meeting where they were planning terrorist attacks against Negro civilians in Harlem. The captain read the report slowly and carefully. Then he looked up at Sullivan. "What are you recommending we do?" Sullivan knew what he was really being asked. "We could investigate further and try to find out who did this. But sir, if we do that, this becomes public news. Newspapers will report that the Ku Klux Klan was operating right here in New York, planning attacks in Harlem. That's going to be a huge scandal. City Hall won't like it. The mayor's office won't like it. And it'll make us look really bad, like we didn't even know the Klan was operating right under our noses." The captain was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then he picked up the report and dropped it in his desk drawer, closing it. Accidental fire. Illegal gathering of vagrants in an abandoned building. No arrests. Case closed. Sullivan nodded. "Yes, sir." And that's how 12 Ku Klux Klan members died in Harlem, and nobody was ever arrested or charged. The police decided that a scandal about the Klan operating in New York would be worse than letting a killer walk free. Especially when that killer had done what the police should have been doing all along, protecting Harlem from terrorists. The 3 survivors kept their promise to Bumpy. They told everyone what had happened. Patrick Murphy went back to the Bronx and told his Klan chapter the whole story. Word spread quickly to other chapters in New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. The story got bigger and more dramatic with each person who told it. Some versions said Bumpy had killed all 15 men with just his bare hands. Some said he had burned them alive on purpose. Some said he had made them beg for their lives before he let the 3 survivors go. The truth was bad enough without exaggeration. Within 1 week, the Klan's operations in Harlem stopped completely. No more threats slipped under doors. No more burned crosses on rooftops. No more broken windows at black-owned businesses. The white-hooded cowards who had terrorized the neighborhood from the shadows decided that Harlem was too dangerous for them now, because Bumpy Johnson had taught them something they had never learned before. Black people could fight back. And when they did, the Klan bled and died the same as anyone else. The night of February 8, 1934, became a legend in Harlem. People told the story for decades about the night Bumpy Johnson walked into a Klan meeting alone and walked out alive while 15 white men didn't. But the story meant different things to different people. To Harlem's families, it meant protection. It meant someone was willing to fight for them when nobody else would. To other criminals in the underworld, it meant respect. It meant Bumpy Johnson wasn't just another gangster. He was a man willing to die for his principles and his community. To white people who thought they could come into black neighborhoods and do whatever they wanted, it meant fear. It meant there were real consequences for spreading terror. It meant Harlem had a protector who didn't play by their rules. And to Bumpy himself? Years later, in the 1960s, a newspaper reporter asked him about that night. He asked Bumpy if the story was true, if he really had walked into a Klan meeting all alone. Bumpy smiled. That same cold smile from that February night 30 years earlier. "Let me tell you something about respect," he said. "You don't get it by asking nicely. You don't get it by being reasonable and polite. You get it by making it absolutely clear that disrespecting you costs more than people are willing to pay." So yes, I walked into that meeting. And yes, most of them didn't walk out, because they came to Harlem to spread fear. And I taught them what real fear looks like. The reporter asked if he had any regrets about what happened. Bumpy's expression didn't change at all. Only one. "I wish I could have sent an even clearer message." But 3 survivors were enough to spread the word far and wide. The Klan learned that Harlem wasn't afraid of them. They should have been afraid of Harlem. February 8, 1934. 15 men walked into a basement, wearing white hoods and carrying guns. They were planning to terrorize innocent families who had done nothing wrong. One man walked in after them, no hood, no army behind him. Just his fists, his rage, and his absolute refusal to let his community be terrorized. 8 minutes later, 12 men were dead. 3 crawled out to spread the warning to other Klan members. And Bumpy Johnson walked out into the cold night, past the abandoned factories and empty lots, back toward the heart of Harlem, where his people were sleeping safely because of what he had just done. That's not just a gangster story. That's a story about what happens when people decide they won't be victims anymore. When they decide that fear is a choice, and they choose something else instead. The Klan thought Harlem was weak. They thought black people would just accept their terror and bow their heads in submission. They learned they were wrong that night. And they never came back. If this story got you, hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you want more Bumpy Johnson stories that history tried to bury and forget. These are the moments that made Harlem legendary. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were in Bumpy's position? Would you walk in alone or bring backup with you? And turn on notifications because we're dropping these legendary Bumpy Johnson stories every week. Next up, we'll tell you how Bumpy Johnson made Lucky Luciano himself show respect. Remember, respect isn't given freely, it's taken. And Bumpy Johnson took his respect on February 8, 1934.